Well, a very good afternoon, everybody, and happy Thursday. My name is Sandy Elson, and on behalf of the travel professional community and homebasedtravelagent.com, I want to welcome all of you to today's webinar. We have a very exciting webinar in store for you today. Most of you know our guest speaker today, Jeff Millar from our professional travel community. Jeff's topic is all about recruiting independent contractors to work for you. And we certainly want to thank Jeff so much for sharing his extensive knowledge and expertise with us. Jeff volunteered to do this webinar, as he has done several in the past, and we really appreciate it, and we always learn so much. Jeff Millar and his wife Sharon are co-owners of Ultimate All-Inclusive Travel. Jeff has been involved in sales for the past 29 years as a salesperson, sales manager, and vice president of sales with a few Fortune 500 companies like Boeing. Jeff and Sharon started Ultimate All-Inclusive Travel in 2003 and together have built a very successful travel business. Before we get started, please remember that you're all muted during this webinar, but we do welcome your questions. You can type in your questions at any time in the question area you see on the right-hand panel of your screen. At the end of Jeff's presentation, we will get to as many questions as we can. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Jeff so he can get started. Welcome, Jeff. It's great to see you here, even virtually.
Thanks, Andy. Welcome, everybody. I hope what we go through today is going to be informative and helpful. And I have left time at the end of the webinar for questions. So if we're all ready, let's get started. What we're going to talk about today is recruiting and finding independent contractors for your business. And determining, we're going to go over some information that's going to help you determine are independent contractors right for your business. I only say that because it becomes a control issue, as we'll see in the details. But I know a number of agencies that will only hire employees and not hire independent contractors for that reason. But let's get into the meat of the thing and let's get started. We can kind of just highlight this. This is our kind of our biography, if you may. Sandy went over most of the information. The big thing that I want to point out with our agency is we're highly specialized. We do not sell everything, but what we sell, we know inside and out. So you can look at that and read that as well as I can. So let's go to the first slide. First slide is what I put up was really kind of a government definition of what an independent contractor is. And an independent contractor is really somebody that you have control over what they do, but you don't have control over things like when they do it, how they do it, who they do it with. So it really becomes a control issue. And the reason the government came out with this definition was to bring on an I.C., it really does save a business because you don't have to pay the employer portion of Social Security. You don't have to pay Medicare for that person. So it does save money. So what was happening were a number of small businesses across the country were designating employees as independent contractors to save on those taxes. And the government came up with a set of rules that you have to follow to determine if somebody is an independent contractor and employee. And in the last few years, they've really come down hard on this because naturally they're losing some of the tax money. They're losing that half a portion of the employer's Social Security. So they've really looked at this with a stern eye. And it really comes down to if you take that definition and boil it down, it's you're not an independent contractor if you perform services that are controlled by the employer. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to look and see that. And the 4 rules to determine an I.C. I didn't print out every single rule the IRS has, but I kind of brought it down into talking points that we can talk about. To determine an I.C. is, first of all, you cannot control what they sell. And in our industry, that would be, say, suppliers. You cannot tell an independent contractor they have to sell a certain supplier. They are free to sell any supplier they want. Now, so that's really kind of what the what is in the travel industry. Is you can tell them, and it would be covered in their contract that they have to sell travel, but you can't tell them what travel to sell. Where you cannot tell or dictate to an independent contractor where they have to work. They can determine where they have to work. So if you want them to come in the office from 8 to 5, legally you cannot tell them they have to do that. They can work at home. They can work from 10 to midnight if they want. You are legally responsible to not be able to tell them where they work. When they work, you can't tell them what hours to work. You can't dictate to them what hours to work. You can't say, I want you in the office. I want you to work from 8 to 5. And in the what thing, I want you, when you first come in, I want you to file brochures. You can't do that. You can't tell them that. You can't dictate that. Or you can tell them that, but they do not have to follow those instructions. You can't tell them how to work either. Their selling process may be different than yours. You may have a procedure you go through. You can suggest they use that procedure, but you can't tell them that they have to use that procedure. So those cover the main points that the IRS rules basically use to determine if somebody is an employee or if somebody is an independent contractor. Now, a workaround from this is there's nothing to stop you from incenting somebody to do what you want. If you, and we do that also. We have preferred suppliers. If you look at the what, we have preferred suppliers. We can tell our independent contractors, you can use any supplier you want. But hey, if you use XYZ supplier, you're going to get paid 16% versus 10% on these other suppliers. So you can incent them to do that. You just can't make them do that. Where to work, same thing. You can say, I have a storefront. I want you to come in from 8 to 5. I would like to have you answer the phone and talk to clients that come in the door. What I'm going to do is right now I'm paying you 70% of the commission for every sale you make. If you do that, I'll pay you 75%. Now, the I.C. has the right to say, no, I don't want to do that. And you legally can't go back to that I.C. and say, wait a second, this is what you're going to do. But again, you can incent them to do certain things. When, same thing. You say, I've got to be out of the office. Can you come in and cover the office for me? And again, I'll give you 75% instead of 70% of the commission if you do that. And the how, but you get the idea. So you can incent people to do that. You just can't make them do that or dictate them to do that like you do an employee. And again, these are the basic 4 rules that the IRS will look at to determine if someone is an employee or if someone is an independent contractor. Again, we're going to have question and answers, so I'm sure it's probably what we go through is going to bring up some questions. Just keep those to the end, and we'll have enough time to answer questions. Let's go look at the reasons to add I.C.s. First of all is to grow revenue. So you can add an I.C. to grow revenue. Now, as we're going to see further in the presentation, that right there is kind of dictate is, do you want to bring on a new person or do you want an experienced I.C. that probably already has a book of business with them? That's an immediate growth, or you can develop a new I.C. to grow your business. So that's one reason, is to grow your revenue. The other reason is if you're busier than you can handle, you can bring on an I.C. to handle an overflow of business. We actually do that with our I.C.s. Is what we do is we take the business that we can handle, and anything above that, we send those leads to our independent contractors. And the way we determine that is what happened before we brought on independent contractors was we would get a stack of 30 leads in a day, And all we would be doing is sending out quotes. We really wouldn't be working those leads to close sales. So our close ratio wasn't as high as we liked it because we really weren't working those leads. So the initial thought was bringing on I.C.s to handle that overflow, and that worked very well. Actually, we have one that we brought in 2005, and he's still with us, does over $1 million worth of business. And that's how he started with us, was taking the overflow of leads and built his business doing that. You can also do it. This is the reason we now add independent contractors, is expand product offerings. What I mean by that is, if you remember in the beginning, I said that we're highly specialized. We sell all-inclusive resorts in Mexico and the Caribbean, and we sell Hawaii. That's it. We don't sell anything else. So what we wanted to do was increase the number and the type of products that we could sell to our clients, but still stay true to our specialization business model. So what we do is we bring on independent contractors that also agree with our specialization model, but they specialize in areas that we don't specialize in. So now, for instance, when we get a cruise lead, rather than turning that cruise lead away, we now send that lead to the independent contractor that specializes in cruises. Same with the Europe lead. We'll get a Europe lead, and we'll do the same thing. We'll send it to the independent contractor that specializes in Europe. And what it's done, too, is expanded our business with our existing customers, because existing customers may go to an all-inclusive resort, but they may only do that every other year or every third year, but they're still going on vacation in those other years. So we now have an independent contractor for whatever they're looking for. We can now send that to that independent contractor, yet we still stay true to our specialization format. You can do it to grow supplier revenue. And a big thing like this is, if you're doing a lot of revenue and you may have a back-end contract, you not only can bring on independent contractors and receive a small portion of their commission, but it also adds to your volume, which now helps you with your back-end contracts or any contracts that you have with suppliers, because you're increasing, as you know, suppliers are going to base what they give you as far as back-end contracts, even commission levels, based on the amount of revenue that you're booking with them. So that's another reason. The other reason is to develop a host agency business. That is something we're really not going to talk a lot about, because that's a whole different ballgame. Now you're talking about the big host agencies that don't really sell travel, but what they do is they have a company that manages, supports, and trains independent contractors. So that is really a whole different business. But again, it's another reason to bring on independent contractors if you want to be in that business of just managing independent contractors. So these are kind of the main reasons why you would look to bring on an independent contractor. I see so many people that say, well, I'm just going to go get an independent contractor, and I'm going to go sign up my neighbor down the street because they like to travel. Not the right reason, and to really bring on independent contractors. You have to look at is, what is your purpose for bringing that independent contractor on? Because that's going to dictate how you set up your contract, how you set up everything with that independent contractor. What we're going to look at now are some of the things you need to consider when bringing on independent contractors. The things you need to consider is, look at it just like hiring an employee. You still need to have a set of criteria. You still need to go through the whole process as if you were hiring an employee when you bring on independent contractors. If you look at it, we contracted to have our house painted. Well, we didn't just go out and get the first house painter to come in and add the house. We interviewed, and we usually set it at 3. We interview a minimum of 3 companies, and then from those interviews, we determine who's going to do that. Same thing when we put in a pool. So you look at bringing on an independent contractor. as if you were hiring an employee, but keep in mind that an independent contractor is going to be managed differently than an employee. So the first thing you need to do is sit down and, based on what if you look at the previous slide, based on why you're bringing in an independent contractor, what you need to do is set and write out, what are the expectations of that IC? What are your expectations? Because later you're going to match it with their expectations to make sure everything's a good fit. And I will tell you, bringing on independent contractors, the 80-20 rule is going to apply. And for those that don't know what that means, it means that 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of your independent contractors. I don't care if you have 10 independent contractors, 100 independent contractors, or 1,000. And I've talked to large host agencies, I've talked to small host agencies, and that 80-20 rule applies. So this is going to help you win. How many independent contractors do I really want to bring on? Because if only 20% are going to produce 80% of the revenue, that means I've got 80% of my independent contractors that I still have to manage, I still have to train, but they're really not contributing to the biggest portion of the revenue. So keep that in mind when you're bringing on independent contractors. Now, here's another important thing, and you would do this with an employee. What traits are you looking for in an independent contractor? Do you want experienced independent contractors, or do you want new independent contractors? And by new, I mean people who have not been in the travel business, but they may have some of the other traits that you're looking for. The biggest difference between the two is, first of all, if you bring on an experienced independent contractor and they have a book of business that they're willing to bring with them, you're probably going to increase your revenue incrementally in a very short period of time. If you bring on a new one, they're going to have to build up a book of business before they start producing revenue. The other factor that you have to take into consideration is the amount of training and support. You're naturally going to supply less training and less support with an experienced independent contractor versus the training and support that you would have to provide for a new independent contractor. And I'm not saying either way is bad, but you have to look at your business and which one of these fit your business. So everything we're going to go over, look at your business model, your business plan, and use these to determine where that fit's going to be for you to bring on an independent contractor. Next one, do you want a specialist or do you want a generalist? Again, that's a decision you have to make based on your business model and your business plan. We do it, we want specialists because what we want to do is expand our product line but still stay true to our specialist business model. So that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for people who want to specialize, but they want to specialize in something other than what we specialize in. The other one is are they planning on working full-time or part-time? I mean, there's nothing wrong with either. I can tell you that every one of the I.C.s we have work full-time. We don't have any part-time I.C.s. They all are working full-time as independent contractors. But again, that's going to be based on your business plan, your business model. Do you want to bring on full-time I.C.s or are you willing to bring on some part-time I.C.s and have them grow into full-time I.C.s? Getting back to is, again, it's just like hiring an employee. This is information you need to know. Now, the last ones on here are traits that I think are critical for any I.C. I don't care if they're a specialist. I don't care if they're working full-time or part-time. I don't care if they're experienced or new. These last ones are traits that any I.C. should have. Is, first of all, strong sales ability. That, in my opinion, is critical, and that is the first trait we look for when we bring on an independent contractor. I don't care what the other ones above that are, as long as they are strong. And an example of that is one of our most successful independent contractors, before she started with us, She was a top producer selling toxic waste disposal. So our feeling was if she was a top producer selling toxic waste disposal, she's going to be able to sell travel. And it turned out she did. She was our probably our most successful independent contractor. So I think, and I was, when I was at Cruise World, I was having a discussion with this with Jackie Friedman, who the president of Nexion, and we were debating whether product knowledge or sales ability, which one came first. And even she said, she told me, Jeff, I think at this time in the travel industry, sales ability is the most important quality as far as being a successful travel agent. The next one is personable, and that's a common sense one. I mean, if you have somebody that, if you're bringing on an I.C. and they don't like people, they don't like dealing with people, well, chances are they're not going to be very successful, number one. And number two, they're not going to fit in your organization. So you need to make sure that they are personable. They don't mind going out and talking to people. They can walk into a room and they can talk to 10 people in that room about, hey, I sell travel. And people love to talk to you about travel, but they need to have that trait of being able to do that. I go to the bank. I do our deposit at the bank, and I spend probably a half an hour just talking to the people in the bank about travel. If they're not busy, I don't take away from waiting on other customers, but if they're not busy, we'll talk for half an hour about travel, and I invariably do not leave without at least half of them asking for a business card. The other thing that you have to have is looking at your organization. Are they a good fit for your organization? I've been in the people managing business and sales for probably 35 years, and I can tell you one bad person, whether they're an I.C. or an employee, can bring down a whole organization. So you have to look at, do they fit your organization? Are they going to cause problems with your organization? It's very critical. And I am proud to say that we have, the I.C.s we have been with us for years, and the original one that we have has been with us for probably 12 years. He does over $1 million in business, and he has no intention of leaving, because we really treat our independent contractors kind of as part of the family, even though the rules for managing them may be different. So we've been lucky that none of them leave. We have had one that left, and the reason she left, I'm very proud of, is she worked with us and built up her business where she was able to go out and start her own business on her own without being affiliated with a host agency. So that is going to happen, and you know, I'm proud to do that because I understand that that will happen. But you need to make sure, look at your organization, and are they a good fit for your organization? Get references from your independent contractors. And the reason I say that is you need to look at what their performance has been in other positions they've had, because, and I will tell you, I don't care how you set it up, if an independent contractor makes a mistake, upsets a client, does something wrong, it is going to reflect on your business, whether you want it to, whether you don't want it to, whether you make them set up their own companies. It will still reflect on your company as the host agency. So make sure you get references. Make sure you check those references. The other things to consider, what level of training are you willing to provide? And if any, are you planning, and what level, the first and second one kind of go hand in hand. What level of training and what level of support are you planning on proceeding? That's going to help you determine, do I want to hire or bring on a experienced independent contractor or a new independent contractor? Because the level of training and support required for a new independent contractor is going to be significantly more than the training and support that you are going to provide for an experienced independent contractor. So make sure you understand that. What level of training are you willing to provide, and what level of support are you willing to provide? And that's going to help you steer in that direction of what type of independent contractor do I bring on. If you're looking to expand products, what area or areas of specialization does the potential independent contractor have? For instance, you say, I want to sell more Europe, but I don't know anything about Europe, so I'm going to bring on an independent contractor that specializes in Europe. Well, you don't want to go out and interview and hire people that turns out their specialization is all-inclusive resorts. You want to make sure that they specialize, and they can have more than one specialization. We have one independent contractor that basically specializes in cruises and Europe. As long as it complements what you're doing and doesn't fight with what you're doing. That's the way to look at it if you're looking to expand your products. If you're just looking to bring on more revenue for a particular product or any product, then that isn't as important. But if you're looking to expand it, it's a great way to offer a variety of travel products to all your clients, but still stay within that specialization model. And it works great. We send our clients to go to all-inclusive resorts if they want to go to Europe to our Europe I.C. She understands that she's doing that Europe trip, but that client still belongs to us. And it works out because she is an expert in Europe. So really, it helps us in our credibility with that client because we're doing that. So that's the reason we do it. Now, the other thing you need to think of is what commission split are you going to offer? The ones I've listed on here are common ones that I see out there. I'm seeing less and less of the 50-50, and I'm seeing very few. There used to be host agencies that would pay you 100%. And people would ask me, well, how can they pay 100%? How are they making money? Because the ones that are at a higher level are going to charge monthly fees, annual fees. If you want training, you pay for training. If you want this support, you pay for that. They'll even cover your phones when you're on vacation, but you pay for that coverage. So look at that and determine what you want. You can have multiple ones. We have 3 different levels of commission. We have, if we give them a lead and they close that lead that we give them, we do a 60-40 split. If where they get 60 and we get 40, if they bring their own lead, we do an 80-20 split. If they do $1 million or more in sales, we do a 90-10 split. So you can mix and match those, just determine, again, it's going to be tied to why are you bringing on an independent contractor? What do you expect that independent contractor to do? And now you can mix and match those commission levels to those expectations. The other thing that's important, and again, remember we talked about, is why you're bringing on an I.C. and understanding why you need an I.C. Same thing with them, is why do they want to become an I.C.? What do they want out of the relationship? And it's important to understand that. And as I said, we had the one girl that used us as a host agency to build up her business and then go off her own. Well, we knew ahead of time that was her expectation, and that was fine. We had no problem with that, but at least we understood that up front. So make sure make sure you understand why do they want to be an independent contractor and what do they want out of the relationship. The other thing is, are you going to charge a monthly fee? Are you going to charge an annual fee? It's going to be based, and the way I've seen it is usually the host agencies that pay a higher commission level are the ones that charge monthly fees and the ones that charge annual fees. It's an annual, I guess, just a contract with them that you pay, and then you're paying that monthly fee for support. That's how they can get away with paying a higher commission, because they're going to make money on those fees that they charge you. I even know a couple that, like I said, they charge, if you want training, you pay for training. If you want these levels of support, you pay for that. If you want us to cover your phones while you're on vacation, you're going to pay for that. So the ones that pay, and that's what they're going to be evaluating. And when you look at different host agencies, they're all really kind of organized differently. So when you organize yours, organize it based on what's going to be best for your organization, but also keep in mind what's going to work for the independent contractor, because if there isn't that fit of why you want an IC and why they want to be an IC, they're not going to be your IC for very long. They're going to be very unhappy, and they're going to go to another IC or go out on their own. So look at, do you want to charge a monthly fee? If you are, chances are you're probably going to have to pay a higher commission split if you charge a monthly fee or an annual fee. The other one that you have to decide, because I'm seeing more and more of this, is independent contractors bringing on sub-independent contractors. We actually have an IC that does that, but be very careful, because where it can become a nightmare is in tracking commissions and who gets what. The way we did it in her contract, we wrote it that she is our IC. We're going to pay her at her normal commission split, and she's responsible for how her sub-ICs get paid. But it's something you do have to consider, because I'm seeing a lot more of that, of host agencies allowing independent contractors to bring on sub-independent contractors. But I just want to make you aware of that, that's an issue, and you need to be prepared. But that tip is, don't get involved in the sub-ICs payments and commissions. Contract with the main IC, pay them theirs, and let them deal with how the sub-ICs get paid. The other things to consider is, are you going to allow ICs to work for multiple hosts? I will tell you, from a legal standpoint, you can't stop them. You can certainly have them sign a contract that says they can't, but by a legal standpoint, I'm saying if it ever went to court, it would be thrown out, because you can't stop somebody from working for multiple hosts. We have another IC, one IC that does that. She does this business with this host and this business with this host, and I can't blame her. She's maximizing her efforts. For instance, she specializes in Disney, and she specializes in Europe. So she gets a better commission with us for Europe, but she gets a better commission with somebody else for Disney. So you can, I mean, they do that. You really can't stop it from a legal perspective, even though you may have it written in a contract. The next point is, be prepared that ICs can be temporary positions. And it's true. If you do, actually, it's interesting. It's kind of like that employee that is an outstanding employee, and guess what? They're going to get promoted, so that department that you got promoted from is going to lose that ability. Be prepared with ICs for the same thing. If you bring on an IC and you train them well and you support them well and they're very successful, there's a chance that they could leave and start their own agency using their own numbers and their own credentials. So just be prepared. That's something to be aware of. The other thing that you need to take into consideration is that you will become a host agency. I don't care if you have one independent contractor or if you have 500 independent contractors. You are, and this is something that my wife and I argue about all the time. She likes to think that we're an agency that has a few good producing independent contractors. I look at it from the standpoint, if we have an independent contractor, we are a host agency. So there isn't really any rules that apply to one way or the other, but keep in mind that you are, as a host agency, competing with other host agencies. That's where that comes into play. So if you're doing something totally different and it's not in the benefit, it's not going to benefit the independent contractor, remember, you're competing against other host agencies. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the contract. And you have to have a contract, a written contract, with every IC you bring on. I mean, this is critical. I've seen more lawsuits, more arguments, more friendships dissolve because there was not a written contract that spelled out what was who was responsible for what and what each side was going to provide. So I don't care if you're bringing on one independent contractor. You need to have a written contract that spells out everything as far as that independent contractor and that host agent relationship. And they should contain, at a minimum, they can contain more, but at a minimum, the terms of the agreement. And that's really like our terms of agreement is this is an independent contractor contract beginning on such and such a date. It's an annual contract. It will be automatically renewed each year. This contract can be canceled by the host agency or by the independent contractor with 60 days written notice. So that's really what the terms of the agreement. The duties of the independent contractor, it's very simple, is you're hiring them to sell travel, to represent your company and sell travel to their clients. Compensation of the independent contractor, that needs to be spelled out. If you remember the commission splits, you need to apply those commission splits. You need to determine, are you going to have multiple commission splits? That all needs to be written out in the contract. The other thing is, and I haven't seen it lately with host agencies, but I saw it in a number of years ago where, and it's especially if it applied with the MLM companies, that what they would say is you're going to get 80% of the base commission. That's a very misleading statement because what is considered the base commission with most suppliers is 10%. So if that host agency is at 16% and you're going to get 80% of the base commission, what they're going to get paid is 80% of that 10%, and the host agency is going to keep that additional 6% that they get paid. So be very careful how you word that. And the other issue that you need to look at in compensation is overrides and bonuses. Who gets that override and bonuses? I've seen it both ways, where the override and the bonus is split with the host agency. We don't do that. Any overrides and bonuses that are earned, they get 100% of those over. And what I'm talking about override and bonuses, let's look at, say, Couples Resorts. Couples Resorts pays you your normal commission, but then they will pay you a $10 bonus for every night that you book at one of their resorts. So now you have to cover in the contract who's going to get that $10. Does the host keep that $10? Because a lot of suppliers allow you to say the host is going to keep it, or it goes to the independent contractor. If it goes to the independent contractor, is the host going to keep their portion of that override or bonus, or does the independent contractor get the whole bonus or override? We do it where that's totally separate and they keep 100% of their bonuses and overrides. We get X percent of the total commission, not just the base commission. So, but you do it any way you see fit, but make sure it's spelled out in that contract, because I've seen a lot of arguments and a lot of almost potential lawsuits over those very issues right there as far as compensation. Method of payment, just explain how they're going to get paid. Like ours says, commissions are paid on or before the 15th of the next month for commissions earned in the previous month. Now, we always pay, and we use a payroll service, so and also direct deposit. So that has to be put in there, how they're going to get paid, when they're going to get paid. I can say that we do on or before the 15th, our independent contractors, I can't think of a time they haven't been paid by the 2nd or 3rd of every month. So but that again, however you handle that needs to be spelled out in that contract. Examination of books. All that means is if an independent contractor thinks you're playing games with them and they're not getting what they thought they were supposed to be getting, they have a right to come in and examine your books to see exactly what they're being paid, how they're being paid, and how the numbers are put together. That would be in a case where the independent contractor expected $150 in commission, and what you actually paid them was $100. And they say, hey, you're messing with me. You're shorting me $50. I want to come in and I want to see the details behind that. Now, I can tell you I've never had that happen, but it needs to be in the contract, because that contract is basically protecting you and it's protecting the independent contractor. And it eliminates all these arguments, and I see so many independent contractors that leave a host with a bad taste in their mouth, when it could have been remedied just by having it in the contract, how it's laid out. The other problem I see is independent contractors not reading the contract, so they don't understand what's in there until there's a problem, and then it's pointed out to them. Well, they're still upset. So that's another point, is when you have a contract, sit down and go over that contract with that person so they understand exactly how everything's going to be handled. Here's another one, that the rights of the independent contractor. Basically, that is, an independent contractor can do this. They can sell to whatever they want. It's really kind of repeating what the IRS rules are. You can work from home. You can work wherever you want. You can work what hours. So it's giving the rights of the independent contractor. Now here, the next one is another one that I see a lot of consternation between independent contractors and hosts, is the ownership of the client and payment of future commissions. It's basically saying, if that independent contractor leaves, who owns that client? Does the host agency own the client? Does the independent contractor own the client? So who has ownership of that client? We have it in ours that if it's a lead you brought to us, then you own that client. If it's a lead that we supplied you, we own that client for the first sale, but after that first sale, you own that client. But that's got to be spelled out. And payment of future commissions. An example would be, I sign up with a host agency. I now sell 10 packages, but they're not going to travel for 6 months. 3 months into this contract, I quit, or I terminate my relationship with that host agency. Now, who is owner of those commissions that are going to be paid 3 months later? Does the independent contractor who resigned own that? Does the agency own that commission? And I've seen more arguments in this than probably any other area. And I'm not saying one way or the other way is right or wrong. I'm just saying it needs to be spelled out in the contract, or at some point in time, there's going to be an issue that's raised with that area. And again, termination of agreement. That basically, we just have it in ours that, the host agency and the independent contractor can cancel this agreement with 60 days written notice. So those are, have a contract, make sure you have a written contract, make sure you go over that contract with the independent contractor, and make sure it has at a minimum these points that we've covered, because these are the points that really cause the most problems between independent contractors and host agencies. So what we're going to do is kind of recap and then go to questions and answers. Recapping, an independent contractor is less expensive to you than an employee is, but you have less control. An employee, conversely, an employee is more expensive, but you have more control over that employee. And the key to successfully contracting with an IC is in the first step, the interview step. Because again, I've seen more people get upset and leave a host agency because after they've signed with a host agency, or after a host agency has brought in an independent contractor, what they found is it really isn't a good fit. So make sure in that interview process that when that person comes in, they understand everything that's going to happen, they understand everything that's going to take place, they understand everything in that contract, and that they are a good fit for not only your organization, but for the reason that you're bringing in that independent contractor. So that's it for the presentation. And Sandy, if you want, we can open it up to questions and answers.
Great, fantastic. As always, Jeff, that was just awesome information. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We do have several questions, and we will get to as many as we can. One of our agents wants to know if there's any conflict in terms with an independent contractor being independent, getting a 1099, but having to abide by the rules that you set out for them.
Legally, no. If it, if the rules, I'd have to know what the rules are, but if the rules pertain to those 4 points that we brought up, then if for instance they're saying you have to work these hours, you have to sell these products, you have to, then you're really in the eye of the law considered an employee rather than an independent contractor. I don't know if that answers it, but that would be my answer. That it really depends on how if it violates or does not violate those 4 points we went over in the beginning. In the eye of the law. Now, again, I'm one of those people is nothing's illegal until you get caught. But when you get caught, I will tell you there are some significant fines, and you have to pay all those back taxes that you haven't paid from the time that person was brought on board. So really it depends on what those violations are and if they really violate one of those 4 points we talked about.
Okay, I hope that answers the question as well. Do your I.C.s have the ability to negotiate pricing to close a deal? Do they have any flexibility in what they are offering? And
Yeah, I've seen host agencies that give flexibility in pricing within certain limits. Like we have that. We have, we have, you can negotiate a deal, but we have to make X amount of commission. Above that, you're free to negotiate, but we have a minimum that we have to make in commission. So I've seen it that way, and I've seen it where there's no flexibility, and I've seen it where there's flexibility, but you have to get permission from the host agency to do it if there's anything other than the standard pricing. Now, that at least in our agency doesn't apply to price match. If somebody price matches, then yeah, the price is going to go down. That they can do that on their own. It's just negotiating any special price. They have some flexibility, but there are limits to that flexibility that they have. Anything else, they have to get it approved by us before they do it.
okay, excellent. What is the best way to recruit I.C.s? Do you have suggestions when an agent is saying she doesn't want to?
We found I.C.s. Honestly, we found I.C.s. A lot of I.C.s that have contacted us have been within our customer base. The one that I told you about that sold the toxic waste disposal, she was a client of ours and wanted to come to work for us. The other thing is friends and family, but I would be cautious about that. Just like selling travel to friends and family, that can be a two-way street. Others is when we're out talking to people. I mean, I talk to people in the grocery store, and they say, hey, how do I go to work for you? That sounds really interesting what you do. I'd like to explore doing that. And we've explored it. And then others, to be honest with you, with us, the ones we've gotten have been referrals from other independent contractors or from actually Joni and Tom referred a couple of people to us that we brought on as independent contractors. So really anybody that you talk to that is interested in selling travel can be a potential independent contractors as long as you go through the process that we talked about today.
Okay.
But look at your client base. I mean, there's a perfect place. These people already like to travel because they're booking travel with you.
Okay, great. This is a two-part question. Do your I.C.s use your business name, or do they go by their own agency name? And
For legal purposes, I'm sorry.
related to
Go ahead.
that, do you create a specific code of conduct or follow-up regimen or anything like that since they are representing your company?
Yes. Okay. To answer the first part, they have their own company, but it's such and such a company, uh, representing Ultimate All Inclusive Travel. But they do have to, we make them set up their own company. And then they can say affiliated with or, representing something like that under it, but they should have their own company set up. So that answered the first question. The second question, we do have some code of conduct. I mean, most of the people in the interview process, we make sure through talking to references, talking to other agents that know these people, that these are honorable people to begin with. But I'll tell you, one that we do is if an I.C. is going to send a letter to a supplier or a client addressing a negative situation, that letter has to be approved by us before it goes out. So it's nothing wrong with setting up code of conduct. That doesn't violate any of the I.R.S. rules. And like I said, the main one we have, because we had run into instances where that has caused us problems, is if you're addressing a supplier and a supplier messed up or didn't do something you liked and you send them a nasty letter, I guarantee you that is going to reflect back on you. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell a story. It's not a pretty story, but we almost got banned by a supplier for that very instance, where an independent contractor sent a very nasty letter to a supplier about something that they didn't agree with. And where it came to be was he wasn't wrong in what he was complaining about. It was down to the old, it's not what you say, it's how you say it rule. So that's when we implemented the rule. If you're going to send anything negative to a client or to a supplier, that has to be, first of all, you have to let it sit for 24 hours. And second of all, you have to send it to us for approval before it goes out.
Okay. We're getting a lot of questions. We're not going to have time to get to all of them. So if we don't get to your question, you may want to try to get in touch with Jeff on your own. Jeff, I don't know if
Yeah, people, yeah. I'll give out my email. You can send it to ultimatetravel2003@yahoo.com.
Okay, can you repeat that again so people can write it down?
Ultimate, ULTIMATE, travel, TRAVEL, 2003@yahoo.com.
Fabulous. And thank you so much for offering to answer everyone's questions.
Sure.
We are getting quite a few. Jeff always does presentations like this one at major national conventions like Cruise World, where he is standing in front of a huge audience answering questions. So this is a little bit of a different venue, and we appreciate, Jeff, that you're still available.
Sure, but I do the same thing at Cruise World. I take business cards, and if people want copies of the presentation, I send it to them.
Do you hire I.C.s who don't have a lot of experience? And if so, how do you handle the training of those folks?
Yeah, we do. We don't, and let me be clear here. We don't have a lot of I.C.s because we chose to handle, to bring on a few high-producing I.C.s rather than a lot of I.C.s where that 80-20 rule applied, and now we're supporting, 50 I.C.s that really aren't producing anything. So, but yes, we do. I mean, to answer your question, yes, we do hire I.C.s without experience. As long as they have the criteria is, the first criteria is they have to be a person that is a top seller in whatever field they're in. That's the number one criteria. I can always, and we follow the philosophy, I can always teach somebody a product, but I can't teach somebody to be a top producing salesperson. So that is really the main thing I look for. I don't put a lot of stock in, your product knowledge. That I can train you that. And the way we do it is because we have a few ICs. We really act as a mentor to our ICs. We're not supporting 500 I.C.s where I can't do that. We're supporting enough where I can actually mentor those people until they get to a point that they're self-supporting.
One of our agents wants to know if you charge fees, and if an I.C. wants to charge a fee, if you don't charge fees, is that permissible? We're talking about like a
We
research fee.
don't charge fees, so I don't have experience in that. But if I were going to charge fees, I would say, yeah, you can charge a fee, but that would be something they would have to set up their own merchant account and do that themselves because we don't even have a merchant account to do that. So yeah, I could say you could make that permissible. Make sure it's in the contract that they can charge fees, and I think we don't sell FIT travel, so we do have an agent that sells FIT travel. To be honest with you, she does charge fees, but she does the fee part on her own, and that's because she handles Europe. Since we sell packages and we know the packages, I mean, it takes us 15 minutes to quote somebody something. So it's not like we're putting a lot of work into it like we would in FIT. So we don't charge fees, but yeah, I think that would be that certainly would be permissible.
Okay. When you're interviewing people who want to be I.C.s for you, what are some of the red flags you look for?
If they jump from job to job, if they've only been in the job a certain period of time, uh, some of the red flag and the red flags, a lot of red flags I require are just personal ones when I'm interviewing them. Just the demeanor of that person. Uh, I'm a big person on how you speak. Do you use correct language? That bugs me no end. Is how you speak, how you present yourself. I think that speaks more to a person than say maybe their work history. I just look at their work history. I just want somebody, and what I do when I look at a person's reviews or talk to a previous employee, were they dedicated to what they do? If they weren't dedicated to what they do, if you call a reference and that reference says the only thing I can tell you is they worked here from year to year, that's a red flag right there. If they don't talk about, because they don't have to, they can't and they won't say anything negative about that person because it could result in a lawsuit. But what they'll do is they'll say, yes, I can verify they worked here from this date to this date. That's a big red flag if that's all you're getting from their references.
I think we have time for one more question, and it is this. Do people who go to work as an I.C. for you come under your um, ARC number, under your E&O policy, that sort of thing, or do they have to have their own?
Yes. Nope. I mean, you can do it either way, but we do cover our I.C.s under our E&O policy. They do. They do fall under our agency IATA number, but they still have to meet the individual qualifications of maintaining $5,000 a year in commissions and all these. So they can get their IATA card through our agency, but they still have to meet the individual qualifications to do that. Yes, they fall under our EEO. We also use Client Ease as our accounting system, and we pay for the use for Client Ease because really it helps us as much as it does them. So yes, they do fall under everything, but anything that requires individual qualifications, they do have to meet those individual qualifications.
Fantastic. Jeff, this has been amazing. As always, I really appreciate your doing this for our community. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it and enjoyed doing it.
Just as a reminder, our guest speaker today has been Jeff Millar. He and his wife Sharon are co-owners of Ultimate All-Inclusive Travel. And I certainly learned a lot. I think all of you did also. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.